Hey everybody, welcome in the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnston here, and the college football playoffs rankings are out for week 2. It's November 12th, 2019, and they were revealed just a few hours ago. And Sean, to me, the top 4, no surprise. I expected it to be exactly as it turned out with Georgia in there at 4. Were you surprised that Georgia got the 4th spot?
Not really. No, not really.
I think a lot of people were anticipating or expecting Alabama to get in there, but Alabama actually comes in at 5.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that Alabama stayed that high after losing to LSU?
A little bit, but you lose to the number 2, to some of those people in the committee, probably number 1 team. Number 1 team now, and yeah, you don't drop that far. I mean, it's just the way it goes. So I'm not surprised. And I think a lot of those, especially nationally, it seems like people put Alabama right there with Clemson, and they weren't afraid to put Clemson at number 5 last week. So, I don't know if they're just trying to keep Alabama close enough to where if something happens, they can jump right back up in there. I mean, there's no secret. I mean, people would rather nationally. And this just goes for just what we watch. The committee and nationally talking heads would rather Alabama be in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
That's not to say every single person feels that way, because I know a lot of fan bases that probably are sick of Alabama being up there. But to me, I mean, I don't see why they just get an automatic bid every single year. Yes, they're good, but if you lose, you lose. I mean, I don't know if that's a preview to the playoffs or what, but they lost to a really good team when they played them. So I don't know.
I still believe, whether they'll admit it or not, but money plays a part in this.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say, and Alabama and Ohio State draw bigger ratings than anybody. I mean, I think it's Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan are the top 4 when it comes to ratings.
Yeah.
When it comes to viewership, when they have games. The committee knows that. Yeah. They're not crazy. They're not stupid. And so money plays a big part of this.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking this week about the scholarship rule and how it was changed to 85. I don't remember when that was, but it seems like college football or the NCAA kind of almost manufactured this, the ability to have a dynasty like this, like Alabama, like Clemson. Yeah. I mean, you look at recruiting ratings every single year, and those top guys are only going to a select few schools, and they fill their roster with those guys. It's tough to, I mean, look at Oklahoma. They've been a great team the last few years, but they don't have the depth. I mean, the depth is what comes from having the top 5 class year in and year out, and that's what Alabama, that's what Ohio State, that's what Clemson has been able to do. And I almost think that they need to up the scholarship count. Maybe even 10, because I mean, Oklahoma's playing with 3 corners right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a little bit their fault.
But I think part of that is, though, I mean, I would argue we almost need to decrease the scholarships, because what's happening is there's only so many 5 stars and there's only so many 4 stars.
Right.
And if you're letting all these schools having 85 scholarships, then you're right. You have just a select few who get all of them, and then there's none. I mean, if you have less scholarships, then you spread that out a little bit more.
Then you change
I mean, the NFL plays with a 53-man roster.
Right.
If the NFL can do that, then I mean, college football can do it.
Well, there's just a lot more college football players than there are NFL, but or teams for that matter. But I don't know. I think spreading it out maybe a little bit more would kind of help that. It's the same story every year, and it's just getting tiring.
When I look at Georgia and Alabama, so with Georgia, everybody's like, they lost to 4-6 South Carolina. How can they be at number 4? But the truth of the matter is, they've got 2 really good wins in beating Florida and beating Notre Dame.
Yeah.
If you look at everybody below them, what big wins do they have?
Yeah, a lot of teams even have really good wins yet.
Right. They don't. So
and
you can say that with who has Alabama beat? I mean, the only good team they've played so far.
And who will they have beat? Because I was looking at their schedule, their future schedule, and
Mississippi State, Western Carolina, Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn might not even be ranked by the time they play them.
Right.
I mean, They could have, because I think Auburn goes.
Auburn has Georgia this week.
Auburn does have Georgia, and if they get beat by Alabama there and have 4 losses, I don't know if a 4-loss team. I mean, if there's enough 3-loss teams that are still ranked,
they're up there at they're at 12 right now. They would not. I think even with a loss to Georgia, they're dropping to 17 or 18. I don't think they drop out.
I mean, Penn State dropped 9.
Yeah, I know.
We were not expecting. That's the biggest surprise was how many Penn State dropped.
Well, I mean, they were 4, and so they dropped 5 spots.
Okay, 5. No, never mind. Minnesota jumped up 9. That's what I'm thinking.
9,
yeah,
which is the most anybody's ever jumped.
That's insane.
Yeah. So so we go on
and
here.
And Baylor dropped 1 after winning, and I know they eked out a win. They still got a win.
Well, I mean, when Minnesota jumps that far, everybody goes down a notch.
I know, but Baylor should have jumped at least 1. I mean, they're still undefeated, and it's hard to go undefeated. I mean, I know that they're basically telling Baylor, schedule someone. Yeah. I mean, schedule someone.
Yeah.
I
agree. Okay, so after Alabama, we have Oregon and Utah, and then Minnesota. I kind of felt at first that Oregon was more deserving to be at number 4, or at least number 5, and Alabama will be at 6. But really, when I started thinking about it, who's Oregon beat? Who is Utah beat? I mean, Oregon's best game was against Auburn, and why they probably should have won it, they lost it. So they haven't beat anybody.
Yeah.
And then you have Minnesota in there, and all day long all I've seen everywhere was Minnesota. How can we beat the number 4 team? How is Minnesota not any higher? Look, guys, I know you beat the number 4 team, Minnesota, but Penn State. But I mean, who else have you? All of the other teams you've beaten have a winning percentage of 42%.
Yeah.
Hideous schedule.
Yeah.
1 game does not get you in the top 4.
And be glad you're at number 8.
Right.
I mean,
you should be happy you're at number 8.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then
because they didn't play anybody in non-conference either.
No, they didn't.
And then their division, which it's not really their fault, but their division is the worst.
Yeah.
It looks like the worst in all of college
football.
Well,
the other 2 top teams in that division, they've got coming up. So I mean, it's just they've had it. The schedule worked out in their favor. They played. They played a Fresno State that lost a lot of people from last year. I forget
South Dakota
State. I mean, but the reality is for Minnesota fans, chill out. If you win out, you're in.
Yeah.
But if you lose a game, you're out. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
They lose a game, they're done. So and they have Iowa, they have Wisconsin, and then in the Big Ten championship game, it will either be Ohio State or they could end up with a rematch of Penn State. Because despite Penn State's loss, they're still undefeated in the East. So that Ohio State game coming up in a couple weeks will determine the East. I mean, pretty much. So I mean, do you feel the same way with that there between 5 and 8? I mean, would you change any of that?
I don't know. Alabama's they're still really good. I mean, it's.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I think too, part of Alabama being up there is I do believe there's a bias, but more so than that, despite the loss and even though they haven't beaten anybody, one, I think Nick Saban, because he's won so many national championships and is successful, I think they get elevated a little bit because of him. And I also think you look at the recruiting class they get year in and year out.
Yeah.
They have talent. I mean, they have talent. They could at any time could turn it on and beat anybody because of the level of talent that they recruit and how many 5-stars and everything. And I think part of that plays into it.
I don't expect them to lose another game. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Looking at their last 3 games, I don't see anyone who will even compete.
No.
I mean, Auburn will compete, but I don't see them winning that game.
Well, I still think Alabama's offense is enough to. I mean, Auburn has a tremendous defense.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and I know Alabama's offense has been giving up some points, but, I mean, with Bo Nix at quarterback, Auburn just doesn't really have a shot at scoring. So, I mean, Alabama should be able to handle Auburn this year. Coming in at number 9 is Penn State. They dropped the 5 spots. Even though they lost to Minnesota, they've gotten some good wins this year. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that they stay in the top 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Oklahoma comes in there at 10. They drop 1 spot, which again, when Minnesota jumps that many, everybody goes down a notch. But they stay in there. They're at least staying in the top 10. I don't think they helped themselves with what happened with Iowa State.
Yeah, and the committee's showing, it's not enough just to win these games. Yeah. I mean, by a point, we said it last week, style points matter to this committee at least. It's a little bit different. They always kind of rotate people in and out of there. So In the past, usually you'd see style points really didn't matter all that much, but this year they definitely are.
Well, the committee changes. There's
Yeah.
different people in the committee from what there was a few years ago,
Yeah.
and so what mattered to an old committee is different than now. So
Yeah, Joe Klatt had a phenomenal little piece on the failures of the committee at this point,
Yeah.
in how it's structured. And if anybody is interested, just go search Joe Klatt on College Football Committee, and you'll probably find it.
I don't like the committee. I think I would have loved to have kept the old BCS ranking system with the computers and just taken the top 4.
Yeah.
I think that's a little more objective than having this committee. I really think, though, I believe the whole purpose of this committee, though, is to make sure that no Group of 5 school ever gets in the playoff. That's
Yeah.
what I feel. I mean, because you had a situation when Brian Kelly, that's at Notre Dame, when he was coaching at Cincinnati, the year he left before the bowl game, but they finished number 3 in the BCS. And so if you had that BCS system, I mean, and there was a 4-team playoff, Cincinnati would have been in that year.
Yeah.
And I guarantee that the committee, one of their things is they're not going to let a Group
Well,
of
the
5 school in.
BCS wasn't perfect either. I mean, there were still teams that would get number 3 and just be throwing a fit, you know. So there's not a
strength
perfect
of schedule was a big part of the BCS.
Yeah.
And teams like Baylor that don't play anybody has no shot under that system.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're getting into the bottom. We start with 2 lost Florida. Florida, Auburn, Baylor at 13, and Wisconsin at 14. You think that looks? I know you think Baylor should have been a little bit higher.
Well, not necessarily, just because they're 3 out of their last 4 games, they've just they haven't had any dominating wins in those games. Right. So Oklahoma State, I think, was the only one that they really, within the last 4 weeks, have really shown to be the superior team. So I don't like them dropping after a win, but like you said, with Minnesota catapulting up there, but I do think maybe Baylor could have been above Florida or Auburn. I know you're probably yelling at your screen right now because Baylor, they didn't schedule anyone in their non-conference. No. They had UTSA, they had Stephen F. Austin, and they had Rice.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 3 teams that you just don't help yourself when you play those teams. Go schedule Arkansas. Yeah. Go schedule Tennessee. One of these teams that you'd be competitive against at this point. So. Yeah. You can't be scared. If you're going to continue to do that, you're not going to make the playoffs.
I think this week,
especially
with Oklahoma and Baylor, if either one of those teams want to get back in it and have a shot, whoever wins that game needs to win by 20 or more. Yeah. Like, it needs to be a decisive win and not a close game.
Yeah, so, in my opinion, Oklahoma needs to they've got to win their next 2, at least 2 out of their 3. They have to have dominating performances, maybe even all 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
think all 3. Yeah.
I mean, Oklahoma State could be a little bit, they could have a game there just because it's rivalry, but TCU and Baylor, if they want to have any chance, which I don't really think they have much of, but if they want to have any chance, they've got to dominate in both those games.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and then taking a look down towards the bottom, we have Michigan, Notre Dame, Cincinnati's up there at 17. They're the top ranking Group of 5 school right now, so if they stay there, they get the New Year's Six Bowl out of the Group of 5.
And I was going to say about Florida, looking at their schedule, they beat Miami first game of the year, which Miami's not great. UT Martin, Kentucky, Tennessee, Towson. They did beat Auburn by 7. Or actually, sorry. No, they beat Auburn by 11.
Yeah.
And then they got stomped by LSU. They got beat by Georgia. I don't know. I only because Baylor's undefeated, I could see them being above Auburn, which beat Oregon early in the season. I don't really give those first game of the season much weight, just because you got brand new players you're putting in there. I mean, it's a completely different team from the first game to now the 8th or 9th, 10th game.
I look at it as if Baylor played Florida this week, who would win?
Yeah.
And I think Florida would win, which is why I'm okay with them being ahead of Baylor.
I don't know.
That's how I look at it. The record doesn't matter as much as when you start. I mean, it matters when you're talking about 8 versus 15, but if you're talking about like 10 or 11 or 11 and 12, with a couple places apart, I ask myself, who would win the game. And if my answer is the team above, then
I don't know.
have no problem.
I think Baylor's offense is better. I know Florida's defense is better, but Baylor, you're not giving Baylor's defense enough credit. I'm telling you, their defense is decent.
Well, they are 31st in total defense and 36th in red zone defense. I think they're 20th in scoring defense, and
in the Big 12.
which is good. But I mean, TCU's is ranked ahead of them, and then
TCU's always going to be. I mean, they've always got it. Gary Patterson's a defensive coach.
But when we start talking about being up there, being in one of the top 4, I mean, we've said this over and over, and you look at it. History has shown. If you want to be in the playoff and you want to have a chance to win a playoff game, you got to have a top 15 offense and top 15 defense.
Yeah, I don't think they're a top 4 team.
Yeah.
I just think that maybe you could sandwich them in between Florida and Auburn in whatever order, or even put them above both, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, we've said it. It's tough to be undefeated.
Yeah.
That defense is doing what it has done against.
Yeah.
Big 12 offenses, which are still good this year. I mean, no matter what you'd like to think, but I don't know.
I would put them above Auburn, but I wouldn't put them above Florida. Auburn doesn't have an offense at all.
There.
Florida, I think, is balanced. They have both. I mean, they have a good defense and they have a decent offense with Trask. So I don't. That's just my opinion. Okay,
Yeah.
So I talked about Cincinnati, and number 18 is Memphis. Now those two are going to meet up.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a heck of a game.
Well, what's crazy to me is number 4 and number 5 SEC, number 6, number 7 Pac-12, number 8, number 9 Big 10, number 11 and 12 SEC, number 14 and 15 Big 10, 17, 18 American. It's just it's crazy to me how many teams are just right next to each other, and I mean a few of those do have to end up playing each other. So. And a lot of movement, and we said it, in the first week, is a lot of movement's going to happen within this playoff ranking.
The committee puts Texas at 19. I mean, that's only 9 spots below Oklahoma with 1 loss, and Texas has 3 losses. I don't think Texas is that good.
Yeah.
I would be okay if they're at 23, 24, 25, but I don't think they're good enough to be in the top 20.
There are 4 3-loss teams in this ranking, and 3 of those are Big 12 teams. Big 12 has more ranked teams this year than they have in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, at one time. I think last year at one point they had 4, but yeah, they've got, I think half their league is 5.
They have 5 now?
Yeah.
Because just a few weeks ago they only had 2.
Yeah.
And so now they have 5. I mean, Kansas State jumped in there, Texas, Oklahoma State. So, okay. Iowa's in there, Boise State, Oklahoma State at 22, Navy stays in. Kansas State, App State back in at 25 despite the loss to Georgia Southern, I believe. And then they turn around and beat South Carolina, which I don't know if that's a big shocker. I'll tell you what, overall, the whole list, we just went through the list. Is there any team you think that's out that should be in? Because I believe, at least at 25, I would have put Indiana in until they lose a game. I mean,
because Indiana's only got 2 losses, but I looked at their schedule.
Yeah, it's
and it
pretty
is
weak.
Not great. It is not very good.
I mean, but if you think about it, up until now, up until Minnesota beat Penn State, I mean, their schedule's as comparable as Minnesota's.
Yeah.
I mean, and so what Minnesota had played up till
That's
Penn
true.
State.
That's
so
true.
I just think that they're deserving until they lose.
And speaking of not really playing anyone, Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the fact that Auburn, there's a chance that Auburn could end up not ranked, and that would mean that Alabama doesn't have a single ranked
top
win.
25 win, right?
But
at the same
token,
and
we're talking about them being
right, but
that's what I'm talking about as being automatically thinking that they deserve to be in every year.
But with them sitting there at 5, there's no way they go up without somebody above them really starting to lose because.
Well, Oregon, Georgia and LSU are going to play each other, so then Alabama
Georgia
jumps
and
back
Utah are going to play each other, and that's a big because Alabama doesn't have anybody left, and if Auburn's unranked,
I mean Oregon and Utah.
No, I mean Alabama doesn't have anybody left that's ranked. So like if Oregon and Utah, I forget what I said. If Oregon and Utah play, one of those two is going to win. They're jumping big time. Yeah. I mean because that's a bigger win than
they could. And the committee has said we will consider a 1-loss conference champion over a 1-loss comparable team.
Right.
So, I mean, Alabama could be heading to the Sugar Bowl. Or depending on where Georgia and Alabama fall, if they both end up out.
At this point, what I project, what I would see happening here is I think LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship, and they're locked in at number 1. I think Ohio State's going to finish out and run the table. I know I shouldn't be saying that because I don't care. Penn State's still a tough game. It's always a tough game.
Yeah.
And
without Chase Young.
he practiced today. He's going to be back.
What?
Yes, he practiced today.
He's not going to miss a game.
He will miss this week against Rutgers, but he's not going to miss the Penn State game.
How is that the case?
Because they appealed, and he's going to. I mean, they haven't ruled yet, but
do you get to play through the appeal?
No, they're holding him out because they believe that the penalty is going to be 2 games. So you sit him out Maryland, sit him out Rutgers.
Okay, so yeah, he already sat Maryland.
Yeah, there will be, and the ruling will come before the Penn State game.
Yeah.
So he's expected to play. So I think Ohio State gets in at number
crazy.
2. I think they get it at number 2. And then I think Clemson's not going to lose. I mean, unless Wake Forest can pull something out of the rear this week.
Yeah.
So Clemson's 3. So now you're looking at the 4th spot. Alabama doesn't play anybody. Oregon and Utah are going to play each other. I believe if Ohio State wins out, they beat Minnesota and Penn State, so they're out of it.
Yeah.
So then what you're looking at, I think Oklahoma beats Baylor, and I think they finish out with 1 loss. So I think the 4th spot comes down to a 1-loss Oregon or Utah or a 1-loss Oklahoma. I think that's how this plays out in the end.
Yeah.
And so you get a conference champ who gets left out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now if Baylor could somehow beat Oklahoma, run the table, beat Oklahoma a second time, then I think they would jump a Utah or Oregon, and they would get the 4th spot if they finish undefeated.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, what if Georgia would beat LSU in the SEC? Like, what would happen?
What if Georgia loses to Auburn this week, and then turns around and beats LSU? I don't know. I think LSU would still get in if that's their only loss.
Maybe. Or Alabama gets there. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Lots going to happen. A lot's going to play out.
This needs to expand like yesterday.
Yeah. Well, we'll do. You know what? We'll do another video talking about that. You know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
6 teams if we're going to expand, but no more. Anyway, and there's reasons for that. But anyway, we'll talk about that another time. But that's your college football playoff rankings. The 2nd week they've come out. We still have. Some teams have 1 game left. Some have 3 games left. I mean, it just depends.
Yeah.
I think some of the Pac-12 teams may.
OU's already had 2 bye weeks.
I think this week.
Or maybe they only had 1.
This week, no.
They're 1 less game than a lot of people.
USC has 2 games left. They have Cal this week, and then they have UCLA, and they're done.
I think Auburn's one of those teams that's already played 10 games. They're like 8-2, I think.
Yeah.
That's another thing is, you have that extra game.
Yeah.
Well, the only 1 team it looks like in the top 10 have played 10, and that's Clemson.
Yeah, Clemson's 10-0. Yeah.
And then Florida that's 8-2. So Florida's played 10 games as well.
And USC has played 10 games.
So Florida gets that extra, while having a loss, they get that extra data point for them.
Right.
Even though they have 2
and that's
losses.
because they played the week 0 that nobody else did.
That's right.
So anyway, so it's interesting. A lot's going to shake out. I think everybody just needs to kind of chill if your team isn't where you want them to be, because a lot of these teams in the top are going to start playing each other, and this is going to completely change everything.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to see.
Enjoy the weeks. Like don't think about the end so soon.
Yeah.
Like enjoy these weeks because it's going to be over
Yeah.
Within a month. I mean, so that's pretty sad.
Yeah, we're it's November 12th, and I think first weekend of December is conference championship game. So it's winding down, and then we get ready for the XFL.
Yep.
So. We'll do a whole video with bowl picks and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, let's wrap this up. So that's our reaction. That's what we think about the college football rankings for this week. Please like the video if you haven't liked it. Subscribe. Go follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, everything else. And we just look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.